The church held an Easter breakfast in Arizona, and more than 80 people from the community showed up.
That sounds nice. I'm sure the church was very excited about it.
They were, but that wasn't the success story.
No?
No, the success story was one particular woman who came with her daughter. Members invited her to Sunday services. She came and they introduced her to the missionaries. That's a direct quote from the article.
They called that a success story. Hello, Eternal Family. Welcome to Postmormon Postmortem's Mormon Monday, where we look at something happening in recent Mormondom and ask, how hard can the church cope as they lose members? I'm Hannah.
And I'm Jess. On August 14th, the church newsroom published an article about something called activity sharing, which lets wards advertise their activities publicly online so people outside the church can find them.
What they've built is essentially a local missionary acquisition funnel using ordinary ward activities as the entry point.
I mean, they don't say it like that. The program started rolling out in 2024. It gives wards public facing pages where they can post Sunday services and activities for people outside the ward congregation to find.
The church specifically says these pages are aimed at a community audience. Wards have been given specific instructions for writing event listings for people outside Mormonism. It says to use community-focused titles. Instead of calling something a ward or a stake game night, for example, it should be called a community game night.
Relief Society can be described as a women's group. Primary can be called a children's group. A fireside or devotional should be called a discussion or presentation. Sacrament meeting becomes Sunday worship service. And there are explicit recommendations about which events work well for community outreach. Easter, 4th of July, Halloween, and Christmas. Well, because they all already have strong community interest.
Basically, because the Baptist church down the street is crushing their annual trunk or treat, and so you need to compete. The church has spent years teaching members to approach missionary work in normal and natural ways, right? Members are told to practice scenarios so that they can, quote, love, share, and invite in normal and natural ways, close quote. In one training exercise, a scenario is that you're at a store and meet a family with small children. They mention they're trying to make Easter plans. You invite them to an upcoming Easter activity and offer to send them the link to said ward Easter activity. I mean, to the community egg hunt.
Unity egg hunt. Yeah. The article highlights the Apache Park Ward in Arizona advertising an Easter breakfast using activity sharing. More than 80 people showed up. But forget those 79 other attendees. The church is very interested in one woman in particular. Quote, one woman who came with her daughter said she felt drawn to the event. Members invited her to Sunday services, and she came. And they introduced her to the missionaries. The end goal, as evidenced by the language of success story, is introduction to missionaries.
Yay! I don't celebrate cult recruitment. I mean, ever since I've read the book Torn, I see everything the church does through this lens of responding to recruiting and losing members. What interests me in this article is how openly the church presents this particular progression as success. They are completely comfortable with the end game. They aren't embarrassed that someone reading this might think, hold on, I thought this was a community Easter breakfast for us just to get to know each other. Why does the happy ending have to involve getting one woman who attended into contact with the missionaries?
Man, that is such a different definition of happy ending than I use. But anyways, that definition and all of that effort makes sense within Mormonism, right? Members are taught that missionary work is loving. And the church is careful to describe activity sharing as an expression of love. Rogelio Osuna, who runs activity sharing for the church, said the goal is, quote, not as a program, but as an expression of love.
Okay, people are to see it not as a program, but
Mhm.
as an expression of love. Okay,
Yep.
well, organizationally, it is very clearly a program. With a dedicated technology, there are training materials and publication standards. There are SEO considerations. There are lead interest indicators. There are required local follow-ups. The missionary department helps develop it. It is not a spontaneous community outpouring of love. It's a recruitment tool.
And I would rather see churches serve their communities without treating the people who walk through the door as prospective converts.
Same. Well, that's Mormon Monday. Thank you for spending your time with us today. If this episode resonated with you, or even if it didn't, we'd love to hear about it. We'll link the newsroom story and the church's activity sharing materials in the show notes.
And we'll be here on Wednesday with some more post-Mormon deconstruction. Until then, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Postmormon Postmortem, online at postmormon.com, and wherever you are listening to this podcast.
And before you go, Jess, sorry for what I said when I was Mormon.
And I'm sorry for what I said when I was Mormon too.